What's going on, guys? It's your boy, Big Blue Drew 97 here to talk to you about the latest chapter of Nanatsu no Taizai, also known as the 7 Deadly Sins, manga chapter 339, titled Fragment of Chaos. So, when it comes to this chapter of the 7 Deadly Sins, unfortunately, it's not really that impactful. Well, let me rephrase that. A lot of stuff happens in this chapter, but relatively speaking, like, a lot of, like, it can be boiled back down to, like 3 major things. And I will talk about them when we get there, but overall, this is a very lackluster chapter. Especially for me, because a lot of things that I was looking forward to in the 7 Deadly Sins basically get wrapped up in this chapter. And starting off, we get just the cover page of the 7 Deadly Sins, where we see Arthur and the cat looking so happy, looking like they love each other, looking like they're best friends. And then we immediately cut to like just Arthur on the ground flailing, and we come to remember, oh yeah, he lost an arm to his best friend. The cat just like ate his arm off and is going through this transformation, and like everyone's like, oh my gosh, Arthur, are you okay? Elizabeth, being the darling that she is, decides to go heal Arthur and wants to save him, and everyone is like thinking about like, yo, what's going on? Like, why did that cat attack Arthur? I thought they were best friends. And then the Lady of the Lake is like establishing like more lore about this cat. It's like, yeah, no, oh man, I wish I had known about that cat earlier. She's like, oh yes, that cat. Oh, I know that cat very well. And everyone's like, yo, what's going on? Like people are wondering like, what is that cat? And we get an explanation of what the cat is. And the bare bones of it is that cat, like everything else in this world, the goddess, the demon, king, it's derived from chaos, but it was specifically the embodiment of like greed and obsession, and it wanted the being the chaos king wanted to like embody chaos. So basically what happens, like chaos like defeated him, but he was like obviously mischievous and whatnot, and would always try to like claim that power. So oddly enough, and this is something that I did not see coming, I thought that the cat was like the goddess, or had something to be involved with the goddess, but in actuality, it's the total opposite. The goddess was actually supreme deity, or the god, like actually like sealed her away, sealed the cat away, which it makes sense for why the cat would appear in the druids when they were doing that task, because as we later figure out, and like over the past of the story, how the druids are strongly associated with the goddess clan and view them as like gods. Makes sense. So like he was free once that's why he appeared there. So Lady of the Lake is telling us this, and Arthur, while he's like flailing on the ground, arm is bleeding out, and Meliodas is like trying to like calm everything down. Everyone is like freaking out. Arthur just getting up, being like the naive child that he seemed to be. He's like, no, that can't be. Why cat? Oh, we also get the cat's name, which I don't know why his name is this, but his name is Cath Palug. Cath Palug. I'm not sure if that's a name that we've heard anything. When I first read it, I read it as Cath Plagueis, like Darth Plagueis. I don't know why. I haven't seen the Star Wars movie yet, but I've heard horrible things about it. But yes, we have little naive Arthur walking up to Cath and is being like, why? Why are you doing this? I thought we were friends. You saved me that one time. Why did you save me? And Cath is just straight up. He's like, oh, I saved you so that I could wait for you to like embody the body of chaos so that I can eat you. Oh man, you look so delicious. Yeah, oh gosh. That cat is crazy. The cat is crazy. And then after like Arthur hears that, like realizes, oh, you saved me because you want to eat me. He just has this like his like moment of realizing, it's like, oh. And then immediately afterwards, like Cat's like, alright, now let me eat you. And then he turns into a cat hole. You get it? It's like a dark hole, or actually more apt to like a wormhole, dark hole, cat hole, because he's a cat, and that's literally what it looks like. It's like a cat hole. It's swirling. All of the sins, Arthur, Merlin get trapped in it. We get another move from Merlin, which was called like Elimination Ray in the fan dub of it, and I think that's a really cool name. And then we also get a comment from Bond, who what it looks like he's doing is he's trying to like steal the power, but he doesn't know that it's working. That's why I kind of say it's like a wormhole, black hole, and it's like basically sucking them all in, like sucking to like a dark center, and everyone's like, oh no, nothing's going on. What's gonna happen? And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Arthur asks like another question while he's like falling to the center of the dark hole, and he's like, "Yo, what am I to you, Kath? What am I to you?" And Kath is straight up says it like, "You are food for me," and then like is like, "And how am I gonna eat you? I love barbecue, Arthur." And as soon as like Arthur hears that, he's like, "Oh, I'm so good to hear that." He just like it's like the like generic thing like you hear from like the protagonist of a story, and it's like, wow, I'm so glad that I can you said that, because now I don't have to hold back. I'm glad that my friend is no longer inside of you. Now I don't need to hold back. Well, in Arthur's case, it makes sense why he's holding back, because he's chaos. And all of a sudden, like we cut to the outside and we just see a slash. And then we see like multiple slashes just appear on the dark hole, and then it just explodes into like nothingness. And everyone's like, "Whoa, we're free? How did this happen?" And then all of a sudden, and like if anything, probably the best scene of this entire chapter, and I'm probably gonna use it as a thumbnail, is Arthur with his sword, and how he talks about once, and then the Lady of the Lake basically says like, once the key has been fully opened or has been fully used, and which the key is the Holy Sword in Arthur, is that the true form of the Holy Sword would basically like come about, and like you just see like the Holy Sword appear in Arthur's hands, and he's just one-handing it, because he lost an arm. He's one-handing it with his arm in his hand. Actually, give me a moment. One-handing the sword in his hand, just like about to like cut, like almost like after like he brings up the sword. I'm gonna put this back because it's actually real sharp. He just all of a sudden like cuts Kath in half, and after that, like for some I don't know how this happened, but he cuts Kath in half. After Kath gets cut in half, like Kath literally shoots across the sky while the world is distorted, and then hits the ground, makes a huge crater, and an explosion out of nowhere, and it's just so freaking crazy. It's so nuts, and like he just did this in like one slash. And then Kath just breaks up, disappears, and then that's the end of it. Because then all of a sudden Arthur's like, "Hey," passes out immediately. And then after, and weirdly enough, like once he passes out, like Merlin like immediately rushes towards Arthur. So like basically like, and she's like very thankful that he's safe and whatnot. So what this shows with Merlin is that she really does care about Arthur. And what we get a little bit later on is that even though, and this is something else that I had questions about, it's like, oh, Merlin may be like the next big villain of this arc of the Seven Deadly Sins. Like, did she really like the Seven Deadly Sins at all? Like, this chapter basically confirms like, yeah, she did like bring the sins together, but she actually thought of them as friends, as family. Like, she really, truly cared for the sins, to the point where, like, after she does all this, she even apologizes and says, yeah, I'm gonna miss, like, traveling with you guys. Like, and she's like, I can't let y'all guys, like, continue down, like, this path of my selfishness. And, like, she says, goodbye. And she also says, thanks Elizabeth for healing Arthur. And she says, goodbye. And Elizabeth's like, wait, we're not done. And then she just snaps and they just disappear. And then we have Merlin holding Arthur and like saying, basically like saying like this is like her now going to be her sin, her new sin, and that she would risk her life to make sure that Arthur is protected. In the same vein of what Escanor did for like this sentence as well. So it does show that she does have care and that she didn't just seek power for power's sake and knowledge, but doing that and also for the betterment of Arthur because like she actually does care about him. And then the chapter ends there. So basically like the main like three things that we got out of this is basically like the reveal of who Kath is and his backstory. Arthur being accepting the fact that like Kath is like a horrible piece of garbage, and Merlin, we realizing Merlin is like actually good at heart, and that she's not going to be like the main villain. So that's basically what we get in this chapter. And overall, like I think it was a good chapter in the sense of it like being a good average chapter. Like it's like average Seven Deadly Sins, something that you can enjoy reading, but nothing that blows it directly out the water. If anything, like I'm a little bit disappointed because like I was under the impression based off like the previous chapters that Merlin might have been like one of like the big bads, or even like for the fact of Kath, like it builds up like Kath like to possibly be like the next big villain for the next 5 or 10 chapters. We would be seeing like the sins go up against Kath, and even in the chapter they mentioned like, oh man, we're like so exhausted and we don't have our sacred gears with us because they just got transported to this place just after like they were having the dinner, so it makes sense that they wouldn't have their weapons and they're still tired. Even though like maybe a day or two has passed since like the defeat of the Demon King, they're still like really tired. So like I was under the assumption like, okay, so this is where it's gonna start. Now I'm under the impression that it's not that the Seven Deadly Sins is ending really anytime soon. Like, oh no, Seven Deadly Sins is ending in like the next like 3-4 chapters. Oh, but it's more of like it's going to be a different story going along, similar to like the first real story arc of Seven Deadly Sins, which is the gathering of the sins. I think this is similar to that, mainly due to the fact that Merlin mentions that this is like her new sin, and like we know that she is the boar, the sin of gluttony, and like what is the most gluttonous thing you do is to be around like power, like literally everything. Like chaos in the world of the Seven Deadly Sins is literally like the embodiment of everything, and she was technically able to achieve that through Arthur. So it's the largest sin of gluttony that you can obtain, which makes sense for the Seven Deadly Sins, where like their sins represent like the worst that they could have done, like in like relation to like that sin, but it's always twisted on their head, where like gluttony is like normally foreseen as like bad and hurtful, and it's like oh, you're fat, you're craving all of this. But Merlin spins it on his head, like the duality of everyone, where it's like she wanted power, she was gluttonous, but that was because she was always empty inside. Like gluttony is like normally it's like you're already full, so you always get more. But in Merlin's case, she was always empty and she could never fill that hole, which it goes hand in hand. But even with that, she always like cherished people and always like would put other people before herself, which really isn't within the idea of gluttony, in the same vein as like putting pride before everything else, in the same form as Escanor. Even if anything, Merlin and Escanor, they may share like a similar like duality, and like I don't think Merlin's gonna die, but I think the lesson that Escanor learned for his lesson may translate over to what Merlin will eventually learn from her lesson, because of how sin and pride are like can be connected in a sense, especially in the story, and especially with the connection that Escanor and Merlin have. Or should I say have, since Escanor is dead. Praise the sun. But anyway, yeah, that's basically this chapter of Seven Deadly Sins. Not a whole lot to go off of. Even when it comes to like the artwork, I think like what would bring this chapter up if like the artwork of like Chaos was like more like creative as it was in the past few chapters. If we saw like more different designs, some more like something that's more aesthetically pleasing than what we saw in this chapter. But overall, I think it was a good chapter. It's a really average chapter. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully you will continue watching my reviews of the Sadly Deadly Sins like this video. And if you would like to leave a like, subscribe, comment. If you would, I would like to see how you thought about this story. Did you think that Arthur was a badass in this chapter? If anything, Arthur was a badass in this chapter. Never thought that I would say that, but Arthur was a badass. Anyway, catch you guys later. Bye!